I think sometimes I spend so much time searching for answers that I'm often looking for something quite undefined, and sometimes you find it in the most unlikely of places. So, a crumb of information that becomes a story that you could never have imagined. I'm Cheryl Bailey and I'm the Senior Archivist at Sheffield City Archives. The work of the Archivist is around collecting historical documents that we keep for cultural, historical or evidential value, and we keep them permanently. What can people find in an archive? It's stories about all areas and all aspects of life. It's human stories, it's a story of your built environment, of industry, of power. I think the archivist has traditionally been seen as the keeper of the archives, the guardian of the precious historical material, something that must be gathered in but mustn't be touched, by human hands. I think it's a really old-fashioned view. I think the modern archivist is somebody who is, has flaws, is subjective. I think the archivist is always seen as traditionally someone who's impartial and objective, and it's a position of power when you think about it. You're making decisions about what gets kept for the future, and that can really alter the course of history. When I think over the past few years about some of the adventures that Tim and Robin and I have been on, it does make me smile. There's a photograph of us in a clock tower somewhere that was covered in pigeon poo, and we had to navigate through that and some angry pigeons to get to some records. We were in the basement of a derelict church, and other times the picture of us with some hard hats on, hoiking out the records from under there. Other times, we've been called to, stately homes to go and see what has been shoved in an old garage or barn at the back. Just all sorts of different places that we've been asked to go and retrieve records from. So it becomes an adventure in and of itself. When we had a writer in residence with us a few years ago, Desiree Reynolds, she tasked herself with looking for people of colour in the archives. And we're talking pre-Windrush, so we're looking for, long-established communities in South Yorkshire, and particularly Sheffield. And our job was to, at that point, guide Desiree through the records and see what we could find. But that grew into something much bigger. That grew into the Dig East End project, which became an archival justice movement and was centred on finding those sort of global majority stories in the archives that have never been pulled out before, because that really does affect, the narrative of the history of the city and the region. One of the first stories or starting points that we had was a piece of moving footage, which in 1901 they filmed at John Brown's Atlas Works in Sheffield. What you see is a big group of white children, but just at the bottom there's a black girl. It's her. She's there. She's visible and she's moving, and there's something quite arresting about that image, which could have easily been passed by. So many different ways we've tried to kind of locate her, and we can't give her a name. We can see these flashes of life and then they disappear and we don't see them again, and we know they were there. We don't know anything about them, but that's quite a powerful starting point for all of our research. And it started us thinking laterally about how we might find names. Where might these people have been? Thinking about the broader context of what's happening in the wider world in terms of migration. Where are people coming from? What are the aristocracy doing? What are the latest trends? And we got thinking a little bit about servants and whether wealthy households in the area would have had black servants. And one of the many stories that we've found relates to Wentworth Woodhouse, and it's a vast estate collection with many, many different types of records within it. We know from some research that was conducted by volunteers at the house that there were certainly two black servants in the 1700s who were given the names Romulus and Remus. So we started to pull at that thread, and we managed to uncover a lot more information about those two young boys in the house. But what this did was almost uncover a whole network of black servants that worked for that household. We started with Romulus and Remus, and what we noticed was that another name came up in the account books. It was my colleague Tim that spotted this, and he brought the book to me and said, there's a guy here who's mentioned they're buying clothes for a guy called George Senegal. Through the account books, we were able to trace George's time in the house. The first reference we find is for clothes. I think he arrived in 1763. He's educated locally with another lad, so there's payment for his education. And as he starts to work in the house, there's payment for his clothes as the under butler. As life and time goes on, George gets married, he has a child, but George gets quite sick. In the account books, there's actually an entry for somebody trying to procure ass's milk because that was seen as something that might remedy his sickness. I felt like that was, in what's seemingly a very dry account book, felt like that. We saw that and we felt that was really touching kind of moment. These black servants would have crossed over with each other in the house in terms of their time periods. They would have known each other. They would have spoken to each other, laughed together. So I feel like once a thread is pulled and you keep pulling, it's amazing how much more is revealed. I think that some of the material that we come across can be quite shocking and distressing. I think that different records affect different people in different ways. I think it depends on your biography or what you're going through or, what your history has been. Sometimes things really, stay with you. A few years ago, we undertook a project with Professor Brendan Stone at the University of Sheffield called In a Dark Wood. And this used some of the material from the Middlewood Archive in part of a Festival of the Mind project. Middlewood Hospital was a psychiatric hospital which opened in 1872 as South Yorkshire Lunatic Asylum. And it had many name changes over the years, later becoming Middlewood Hospital. It closed in 1996. Many patients passed through that institution. The records that have been created include admission registers, case notes, but also photographs. And these glass plate negatives show patients, lined up in groups of 3 or individually, and they're very high quality photographs. There's no information about why they were taken. We don't know who these people were. We can never match up the images with names. And so they feel a little bit like lost souls. We got the glass plate negatives digitised, and they were used as part of an installation alongside contemporary voices of people who'd, experienced mental health services. It seemed right that somebody with that lived experience led a project where these deeply sensitive images were presented. The material cannot just be wheeled out for people to have a look at. There needs to be some context, some careful handling. It's not always the archivists that should be doing that work, a bit like Dig Where You Stand or In a Dark Wood. It really needs other people to come in and take that material and present it in a way that causes no further harm. I think when you work with archives and you always have this critical analysis head on, you're always thinking about what it is that you're reading, and is it really the truth or is it just somebody's truth? Because that's usually the case. I think that's something that you can't help but have permeate your life outside of archives. It's that sense of everything you read really and look at, what does this really mean and whose truth is this? So I think that's something that you can't really easily switch off. We live in the age now of AI that is developing at a rapid rate, which is both exciting and terrifying. Sometimes, it troubles me because I think what I see on the internet is AI responses to searches, basically gathering together a lot of misinformation on the internet and reproducing it as an answer, which I think that people will take as read. Misinformation does worry me. When you think about what has been lost and what that means to people, I think an archive gives you that sense of being connected to your own past and your identity, where you're at now. I think it connects people to the land. Without any of that information, I think you could feel quite adrift, and during conflict and war, quite often that cultural memory is attacked. Libraries and archives and museums being destroyed. The whole point of that is to destabilise people, take that memory and that connectedness away, unravel it. If you don't have archives, then you don't have any, you don't have your memory, you don't have any evidence, there's no accountability. Some sort of situations that could mean somebody's sovereignty that you're taking away. So I think without archives, we'd be in quite a dark place. I think that one of the things that I like is the communication of the results. I've always been interested in stories, and what we have here in the archive are hundreds of thousands of lives and people's stories. And I think it's our job basically to find those stories, give them context and connect them up. So sometimes it's just about stepping back and thinking, where might that information have been recorded? And you can strike gold.